My name is Latasha Fields. I am the founder of Christian Home Educator Support System in Chicago, Illinois. I want to thank Chairman Yumeth for having me, the Ranking Member Womack, and members of Congress. It's a blessing to be here today.
Today, we're diving into something pretty wild that came out of a congressional budget hearing on poverty. Now look, these hearings are usually dry, bureaucratic, lots of posturing, lots of cliches, very little truth. But this one actually had something deeper, something raw.
I have been married to Ronald Fields II for 13 and a half years. We are home educators of 4 wonderful children. I have 2 girls, 22 and 3, and 2 boys, 12 and 9. My husband and I are both born and raised in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I spent 33 years there before I came to move to Chicago, Illinois, 7.5 years ago to expand our evangelistic work. We serve as the overseers and pastors of our Report Ministries and Publication in Chicago. I am also the founder of Christian Home Educator, which is a homeschool academy, and Christian Home Support System, which is our support group. These are evangelistic outreach ministries to serve and support the families of the city of Chicago and surrounding communities. We provide assistance, resources about home education, cooperative educational and recreational resources, curriculum and parental rights issues, and much more. Our mission is to empower parents to take back the responsibility of educating their children. I am also the state coordinator of parentalrights.org, a volunteer of Junior Achievement of Chicago, and a member of Cure Clergy Network. I also have over 19 years of entrepreneur experience, with 14 of those years being consecrated in the real estate industry and several certifications in property management and nonprofit housing. I am also a recent graduate of Trinity Christian College in Palo Heights, Illinois, with a bachelor's degree in business administration with a 4.0 GPA. So let me tell you a little bit about my journey, which is nothing short of the grace of God towards me. My grandmother, who raised me, also raised 9 kids of her own, was a homeowner living in a poor Black drug-infested community in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. She raised me and my younger sister. My mom was a teenage mom on drugs, in and out of prison. My grandmother was a strong woman, hardworking woman. She showed tough love and had amazing independent work ethics. So I basically grew up in the typical Black stigma community surrounding me: the lack of motivation for education, promiscuous behavior, drugs, crime, and some on welfare. In spite of the circumstances that surrounded my childhood, I was one that often fought against the odds. I had a love for education. I never did drugs and I never committed a crime. But however, I did fall into promiscuous behavior, and at the age of 17, I became a teenage mom. This was the turning point of my life. I will never forget the day that I found that I was pregnant. I went into a Planned Parenthood in my neighborhood. I was devastated, I was frightened, and I was scared, because I was one of those kids that excelled in school, was popular in school, played sports, was on the homecoming court. You name it, I was in it. So basically, I kept myself from the normalized behaviors that plagued the Black community. So becoming pregnant was embarrassing to me. I didn't want to be like the rest. I had always strived to be better. I didn't want to be like the social norm. I didn't want to be another statistic. I didn't want to be the 72% of moms raising a child single. So while waiting for the results of my pregnancy test, I was crying and I was thinking how I had ruined my life. The nurse came back in the room and she told me that I was 3 weeks pregnant, and she consoled me that I had another choice. I had a choice to abort my baby. In that very moment, my life flashed before my eyes, because I had a big decision to make. Do I get rid of my baby and proceed as normal, as though nothing happened, and go back to my family and friends and continue to live out my life? Or do I live the rest of my life knowing I had killed my baby? Do I keep my baby and face the challenges that lie ahead of me and press past the shame, the regret, and the disappointment? I chose the latter. I chose to do what I will always hear my grandmother say: you make your bed hard, you lie in it. Those words rang loud and clear in my heart and mind. Yes, we did this. No one else is responsible for the choice we made. I must take responsibility for my actions and live with it. Live the best possible life I can, give my child the best possible life I can, finish high school, go to college, and make something of myself. I decided, in spite of my teenage pregnancy, that I would continue to press past the popularized social norms of the Black community. I worked hard. I graduated from high school 5 months pregnant. During my teenage years, I worked at Burger King. I was a part of an entrepreneurial program that we had. I worked there throughout my high school years, from 15 till I graduated. But I was a mom, so I had to continue working at Burger King to provide for myself and my baby. I lived with my grandmother for several months after I had her, and she encouraged me to get on food stamps, to receive WIC, and to receive child care assistance. During this time, she also helped me to get my first apartment. After about 9 months of renting, the real estate company asked me, did I want to buy a house? I was shocked. I was excited. I went through the first-time home buyers program, and I purchased a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house at 18 years old. After 2 years of being on food stamps, I found myself increasingly growing to hate the program. I felt awful while I was on the program. It was such a level of disrespect and deprivation. I couldn't take it any longer. I removed myself from the food stamp program, but however, due to me working and going to college, I had to remain on child care assistance. After having my baby in 1996, buying my home in 1997, the same real estate company offered me a job. I became a secretary, later a rental assistant manager, and later in December 2005, I became a licensed real estate agent. However, from 1996 to early 2005, I was a single mom, working hard, working 2 jobs sometimes, going to college and maintaining honors. By November 2004, I gave my life to Christ. Met my husband. We got married October 2005. After becoming a Christian, I became an ordained minister. My faith began to challenge and propel me to work for families and kids and tackle the problems that plague the Black communities. I lived it, and I wanted to reverse the plague. I had begun and purposed in my heart that I would become that change and advocate for my family and friends. In 2006, I felt compelled by God to take more responsibility for my daughter's education. I took her out of the public education in the 4th grade, and I wanted to give her a Christian education by homeschooling her. So we did. My husband and I did not know what that would entail, but we obeyed God. Later, in 2007, we opened up a Christian homeschool academy as an extension of our evangelistic work. My husband and I are now homeowners in Chicago, Illinois for the last 3 years. My husband is the owner of his own barbershop in the South Shore community in Chicago for the last 5 years, and we are continuing our ministerial work with our Christian school and our co-op group to support the families in the city of Chicago.
Mr. Fields, if you could wrap it up, your time is considerably over, so
it
you
is.
can wrap it up. You can make a concluding statement.
Oh, wrap it up, okay. And one more point, that we graduated our oldest daughter, she's 22, from being homeschooled all the way to 12th grade. We graduated her from our homeschool academy, and now she just walked across the stage from the University of Bridgeport with a degree in nutritional science with a 3.1 GPA from being homeschooled. Thank you.
Are there examples of successful anti-poverty programs that you have been a part of that address these problems for youth?
Thank you, Member Flores. Yeah, and that's I'm hearing everybody testify as well over the same thing, and I'm finding it hard to understand why, when the word is said hard work, why is that interpreted in a different way? I realize all of us sitting here, everyone in this room has worked hard to some extent. But what we're saying is, and I believe you all would agree, that even where you all sit as representative Congress and senators, you did not do it by not working hard. And so we just need to understand what that word means. We're saying that you have to persevere, you have to endeavor. And for me, I grew up in the same environments that everyone sitting here is testifying about. Again, my mother was on drugs, in and out of prison. My grandmother did not have federal aid. My grandmother bought a house in 1972 working as a janitor at Louisiana State University. So before the civil rights, there was no federal aid. There was no welfare and food stamp. So I'm sorry if I come from an environment where I have seen that you do not have to rely on government. Right. You can work hard and persevere no matter how long it takes, and that's what I did. I got the food stamps for a couple of years, so I'm not here to say totally dissolve it. People do need help, but what I'm here to say, and especially working in the real estate industry, it doesn't have to be perpetual. Right. You know, you got families that pass Section 8 and welfare down like it's an inheritance. The Bible says we ought to lay up an inheritance for our children, sure, and it's not government entitlement.
When you said you homeschooled your kids, and I want to understand what values you teach them.
Oh, I definitely teach them personal responsibility. And even to add to that, what you were saying about trade, me and my husband both, even though I have a bachelor's degree, I also have a trade. My husband is a barber. He has a trade. We have lived the life they're saying with the living wages. I bought a house making $4.25 an hour. So we understand living on wages, but the way we got out of poverty is what you're saying, is we got trade. We went and got an education. And my husband talk about that all the time. If the government could make trade more accessible, you know, spend those federal dollars so people can sharpen their skills and get out. My husband just bought us a 3-bedroom home, 2 full-bath home in Chicago, being a barber with a trade. He has a 10th grade education, and he did it with a trade skill. So those are the kind of programs that we should be advocating for our government, to sharpen our skills, bring back those trade skills into the Black community so that we can rise above poverty. We can't do it with just a high school education all the time. We need trade, we need skills.
I'm a little frustrated because I heard a lot about love. And one thing that I know is it's not because of the lack of love that we're not able to feed our children. It's not because of the lack of love that we are able to house people. It's not the lack of love that we are unable to save people from dying because they don't have health care. It's not because of lack of love that you were able to finish college because you got help with childcare. Love has nothing to do with this. And if you want to bring love into this, you got to bring radical love. Because radical love means that we radically love every single person within our communities to make sure that we are providing for them the basic rights as humans. That's what love is. And that's the godly thing to do. So if we want to talk about faith, we also have to remember that we can't pray our problems away.
Exactly.
You can't pray for your children to be fed, so you're not crying because they're crying and they can't go to bed. You cannot pray for your medical bills to disappear. You cannot pray for the mold to stop poisoning your children in the classrooms. The other thing that frustrates me is people who have experienced poverty, who have gotten the straps for their bootstraps, who sit and talk about how we shouldn't do anything for the next person. See, as someone who knows severe poverty, I lived in a refugee camp, on the floor, no water, nothing. And I hear somebody say, here in the United States, they're fine with their grandparents not having running water? And that's supposed to be okay? Or we hear someone say, it was a choice made up to me to have my children and not be like the other black people who get to have children out of wedlock. We don't get to have those kind of conversations. The conversations we get to have is how we are responsible for fully funding our schools so all of our children have the opportunities we have as we sit in this room. We get to talk about the kind of opportunities we have as government to make sure healthcare is provided to everybody so that we don't have people dying in the United States because they can't afford insulin. The conversation we get to have is making sure that there are no children going to sleep hungry or being shamed in classrooms and in lunchrooms because their families don't have enough money to pay for their lunch. The conversation we get to have about the kind of poverty we have in this country is the kind of poverty that says it is okay for us to take photo pictures with veterans and be okay with the fact that they're sleeping on the streets here in the United States. So as an immigrant, as someone who came to this country, hearing about American exceptionalism and prosperity, I am appalled that we get to sit here and have conversations as Americans about being the most charitable country in the world and not being charitable enough to house our homeless, feed our children, care for our veterans. What is charitable about that? So I ask you, the kind of systematic barriers that exist in prosperity, that's the conversation we should be having. And so I want you guys to, for the little bit of time that I have, to talk about the systematic barriers that exist in creating prosperity and what it means for us to remove those so that all of us could have the prosperity that is guaranteed within our Constitution.
We had a Christian pastor, Latasha Fields, sharing a personal testimony about poverty, responsibility, faith, and how she clawed her way out of generational hardship. And then we had Congresswoman Ilhan Omar responding in a way that, let's just say, shifted the whole conversation into a very different place. So buckle up, because we're going to break down exactly what was said, what it meant, and what it tells us about the ideological battle happening right now in America. All right, let's start with Pastor Latasha Fields. Her testimony wasn't some abstract policy treatise. It was her life story laid out on the table, clean, unromantic, and brutally honest. She talks about being raised by a grandmother in rural Louisiana, a grandmother who worked as a janitor. Yes, a janitor at LSU, yet still managed to buy a home in the early 70s without relying on federal aid. Fields describes a childhood surrounded by drugs, crime, and stagnation, but she makes it clear. She didn't follow that path. She never did drugs, never committed a crime, though she admits falling into promiscuity and becoming a teen mom at 17. But here, the pivot. Standing in a Planned Parenthood clinic, shaking and embarrassed, she is offered an abortion, a choice. And she refuses. She chooses responsibility. She chooses to keep her child. She works at Burger King while pregnant, goes to school, gets on food stamps temporarily, buys a home at 18 with a first-time homebuyers program, climbs from secretary to real estate agent, gets off welfare entirely, becomes a Christian, becomes a minister, homeschools her kids, builds a homeschool academy, supports her husband's barbering business, and becomes, no other way to say it, a genuine community builder. So after all that, Ilhan Omar responds, and the energy instantly shifts. Rather than engage Fields on the substance, responsibility, faith, dependency cycles, Omar reframes the whole thing. She says she's frustrated, and that love isn't enough. She says you can't pray your problems away. She argues that poverty is not about responsibility, but systemic barriers. She says people need government help because love doesn't pay medical bills. She even takes a jab at Fields' suggestion that she didn't want to be like the other Black people, having kids out of wedlock, twisting a personal statement of aspiration into a moral accusation. Here, what struck me. Ilhan Omar didn't rebut the facts in Fields' story. She didn't challenge the data. She didn't counter with examples of successful government programs. She didn't address the issue of generational dependency or failing public schools. Instead, she did something very politically effective. She shifted the moral framework. She framed government expansion as radical love. And look, credit where credit is due. That's powerful rhetoric. It resonates with people who see suffering and feel like only big systems can fix it. But here's the part that makes conservatives, moderates, and honestly anyone who values independence raise an eyebrow. How is it radical love for the government to grow while the individual shrinks? How is it radical love to assume people can't rise without the state? How is it radical love to treat the symptoms but never ask about the cause? If a community stays dependent for generations, that's not compassion. That's captivity with a prettier label. What Fields represents is something rarely allowed to survive in modern political discourse. A Black woman from poverty who made it out. Not because of the system, not because of entitlements, but because of determination, family, faith, and grit. Her story doesn't fit neatly into the progressive narrative. So instead of engaging it, it gets reframed. But reframing doesn't erase reality. The truth is, government help can be a bridge. But if the bridge becomes the destination, people never reach the other side. Latasha Fields is living proof that the first vision is not just possible, it's real. And the important thing is this. Her story does not invalidate the existence of systemic obstacles. No one is saying the world is perfect. No one is saying poverty is easy to escape. No one is saying everyone has the same opportunities. But her story does show that obstacles don't have to become excuses. Her testimony shows that human beings, regardless of race, background, or starting point, possess dignity, strength, and agency. And that's precisely why her narrative makes some politicians uncomfortable. Because if people can rise without government, the power of government diminishes. All right, guys, if you liked this breakdown, hit that like button, drop a comment below, and let me know what you think. Is Fields right about responsibility and empowerment? Or is Omar right about systemic barriers and radical love? I'll see you in the next one.